In every single Smash game, the archetype known for consistently performing the worst in competitive is the heavyweight. Donkey Kong, Ridley, DDD, Ganondorf, while incredibly fun to play in a casual setting, you'd have a better chance finding a Game & Watch that never spams up B except to recover than to find one of these at top level play. As talked about countless times, not just from myself but from other YouTubers, heavyweights have routinely struggled to find any semblance of top level success due to the very nature of platform fighters diminishing the value of their strengths while exposing and exacerbating their weaknesses. Over each installment, they've tried a number of ways to make heavies more competitively viable. Smash 4 was the first time we got to see heavyweights actually perform well in tournament play, and players are growing more optimistic that Smash Ultimate would continue to equalize the disparity in power between the classes of fighters. Their hopes would, at least initially, be made a reality with the announcement of King K. Rool. He was an extremely well-received fighter, noted for boasting a plethora of strengths that were never seen before on a super heavyweight. Upon Ultimate's release, the general consensus on K. Rool was that he might very well be the first ever top-tier heavyweight in the game, highlighting just how good of a first impression people had of him. So what happened? How did one of the most anticipated fighters at the beginning of Smash Ultimate go from a perceived high tier to seemingly one of the worst characters in the game? For today's episode of Why No One Plays, we'll be looking into King K. Rool's fall from grace. Though the heavyweight archetype received a number of buffs and conceptual adjustments across the board, K. Rool, alongside his fellow heavyweight newcomer Incineroar, brought with them some very unique and powerful tools that were aimed at leveling the playing field against the competition. In spite of his current ranking, what he does have up his sleeve is still just as effective at what it's intended for now as it was back then. So let's go through what even top players initially believed made him so good in the first place. Being the second heaviest character, only 2 points behind Bowser, K. Rool is among the most durable fighters in the game, easily being able to withstand attacks that would have been fatal for anyone at far lower percents. This is especially helpful to him as, like the rest of his peers, he can easily rack up damage or straight up demolish the stock if you so much as give him a single opening. K. Rool's trademark characteristic is the super armor attached to his belly, also known as belly armor, causing several of his attacks to power through even if his opponent strikes first, having the damage in the process. Though it does have an eventual breakpoint, literally, the benefits far outweigh the risks, making him surprisingly difficult to challenge head-on in neutral and disadvantage, since any chance of a mutual exchange is not only impractical due to him likely surviving longer than anyone, but completely favorable for him as he only takes half damage and can strike you fully with this attack. Conveniently, the attacks that you would like to have belly armor on do so, an example being forward tilt, being your staple grounded poke and or whiff punish tool. Having super on it grants you a net advantage in this department. K. Rool's Buster Clap is arguably one of the best forward tilts in the game for having respectable speed, good range, extremely high damage and subsequent kill power, strong shield pushback, and being uninterruptible because of belly armor. The mere presence of belly armor affords K. Rool the option to throw out attacks with less regard for spacing or timing, since even against faster opponents he can tank their hits while striking through them. On top of having unchallengeable attacks, K. Rool was given a number of moves with deceptively quick startup, vastly increasing his punish game. Attacks like neutral air, up air, forward air, dash attack, and up tilt are notable for being very fast, especially given their power and effective range. With these two aspects, armor and quick startup, K. Rool can be surprisingly proactive, unusual for heavyweights who tend to have to wait for a reckless play by their opponent. Speaking of proactivity and reactivity, another unorthodox property of K. Rool's arsenal is the inclusion of not one, but 2 projectiles, each capable of doing more than just serve as projectiles. Starting with the side B Chronorang, he throws his Chron forward a far distance that eventually returns back to him, being able to inflict damage twice, and a very serious amount at that. Moreover, though it has a very long cast time, K. Rool has very strong heavy armor, capable of withstanding most attacks in the game. Also on its return trip, the resulting knockback from his crown sets up into many of his most powerful attacks. Anyone careless enough to hit him with a weak attack during this time can get caught by a jab 1-2 before taking a mean up smash, up air, or back air right in the face as the crown punts into them. One more thing is that the crown itself covers an immense amount of space and travels a full distance whether it does or does not come in contact with an opponent's shield or attack, in contrast to other boomerangs that get sent back immediately upon being blocked. This can force K. Rool's opponent to hold shield for an excessive time, opening up the opportunity for him to grab them. The same applies to Blunderbuss, a massive cannonball that travels slowly but also has very long range. Recasting it can transform his Blunderbuss into a vacuum inhale similarly to Kirby and DDD. The only difference is that the forward launch variant has staggering knockback, closing out stocks near the ledge easily below 120. With Chronorang and Blunderbuss, K. Rool has the option to set up reactive situations as well, and honestly prefers to. By using his neutral and side B, he can render large sections of the stage hazardous, forcing his opponent to take very predictable approach options which he can then punish using his belly armor. I would say of all heavyweights, K. Rool's advantage state is easily the hardest to fight back against. If you lose the neutral interaction, your only real option is to reset back to neutral since he can break through any attempts you might have at striking back in disadvantage. His neutral air lets him edge guard almost everyone in the game even if their up B has a hitbox, and trying to land against him can be terrifying with his monstrous up air and dash attack, covering vertical and horizontal space equally, although both are extremely committal. His unique assortment of moves and attacks lead to him being pretty much the first zoner heavyweight, as unlike DDD whose Gordo can be struck back, K-Rool's projectiles can be tough to deal with in a straightforward manner. He can repeatedly pressure you into approaching him from a distance, then stuff you out with super armored attacks, and if you harbor any illusions of trying to play the Zona game yourself, he comes equipped with Gut Check, doubling as a reflector and a counter. Trying to hold shield as an answer to his pressure is just as bad of a decision. Though not quite as scary as the likes of Bowser or Donkey Kong with their insane grappling, K-Rool also has one of the best grab games among the cast with a very long grab range that comes out of frame 8 and all 4 of his throws being useful in some way, shape, or form. Forward throw can set up into early dash attacks, and tech chases, down throw is a berry setup that's almost a guaranteed kill at 150 in conjunction with up tilt, and he can kill even earlier with an up smash read. Back throw doesn't have the highest knockback scaling, but due to the angle it sends you at, it can kill extremely early, especially with rage, which he's almost guaranteed to have due to his massive weight. Finally, up throw, the highest damaging throw in the game as it does upwards of 20%, and to higher percents you can outright kill with it. Suffice to say, you do not want to get grabbed by K-Rool, although he kinda forces you to hold shield with all his other stuff. Also, thanks to his quirky moveset, K-Rool has the highest number of fancy tech and combos out of any heavyweight, which can easily blindside inexperienced players who never fought against a good K-Rool. This only scratches the tip of the iceberg, but stuff like dropping down platforms while using the vacuum suck from Blunderbuss, or all the different ways he can play around his crown and combo off of it make him a rather threatening matchup check. And that's ultimately where he shines best. K-Rool is one of the hardest matchup checks in Smash Ultimate, and I mean that as a compliment. The heavyweight archetype is notorious for screwing over players for even the smallest oversight, but K-Rool pushes that to infinity. Similarly to how Snake's grenades make you rethink and reapproach what you know about the game, K-Rool is designed to invalidate certain conventional interactions, requiring players to adjust accordingly or die trying. Stuff like using a faster aerial to beat Incineroar or Donkey Kong in air-to-air won't work against K-Rool on account of his belly armor. Likewise, trying to camp out K-Rool is noticeably tougher compared to other heavyweights, and you have to keep all of this in mind while accounting for the many ways he can surprise you and take your stock. This can make him an uncharacteristically technical fighter, as opposed to heavies being very straightforward in nature. It's also why in Elite Smash you see so many of them. He's a fantastic noob stopper, or in other words, a huge portion of K-Rool's performance hinges on how little the opponent knows about him, and that's where we arrive at the first major reason why K-Rool is unpopular at high and top level. K-Rool's a very polarizing character. Though the extent of his strengths may outstrip the likes of Bowser or even Kazuya, they're outnumbered by crippling weaknesses, chief of all being that every single one of his moves has a blind spot. Obviously every attack in Smash has a weak point, even the best ones in the game have something in which it can be exploited. Game & Watch's up air is widely considered the best up air in the game, but it doesn't have much kill power, it's exclusively a juggling and damage racking tool. This kind of example would be grasping at straws though. Just because an attack doesn't do everything doesn't mean it's not broken. That's not what I'm talking about though. K-Rool's attacks have very conspicuous blind spots, figuratively and literally. To start, most if not all of his fast attacks are compensated by having immense end lag. Take Dash Attack. At a frame 7 startup, it's one of the fastest, has great power, belly armor, and travels a fair distance. But it's also minus 38 on shield, making it super punishable unless you land one of the later hits, and even then, it's still punishable. You can add a shield K-Rool's Dash Attack with virtually anything, so if he misses, he's gonna take a lot of damage. Another attack would be Up Smash, frame 6, one of the fastest in the game and ridiculously strong, but my word, it's one of the laggiest Smash attacks in the game or one of the laggiest attacks period. A whopping 48 frames of end lag. Up Air's frame 7 and Infamous are being the laggiest up air in the game, taking almost a full second to complete its animation. Though some of his moves are not as egregious, across the board K-Rool's moveset is reminiscent of the laggy animations of heavyweights back in Melee. So in exchange for deceptively high speed, if he misses, he can just as easily get destroyed. Every heavyweight is burdened by this to an extent, but K-Rool easily has it the worst. This means that while he may have very fast moves, he lacks anything that he can just throw out for the sake of throwing out, besides maybe neutral air, but even that can be punished very easily. Another problematic aspect to K-Rool is how specific his hitboxes are. His imposing sides grant some fantastic effective range, but not that much coverage, extending only in the direction they're intended to be in without deviating anywhere else. Why this is such a problem is that he is arguably the largest hurtbox in the game. Look at forward air for instance, a dropkick that does mad damage and is modestly safe on shield, but notice how it only travels straight in front of him, contorting his hurtbox in the process. With the way he flings his arms up and sticks his belly down, it's very easy for you to hit him from either direction. Originally, this is intended to be balanced out by his belly armor, but true to its name, that armor is only attached to his belly, rendering his extremities completely vulnerable. K-Rool doesn't really have a cover-all move, no Bowser up tilt, Incineroar neutral B, Ridley Nair, DDD up tilt, etc. He picks a direction and commits to it. Even his neutral air can't really be viewed as a cover-all move, as it's positioned ever so slightly in front of him, making it impossible to strike enemies behind or above him compared to other circle nairs like Incineroar or Sephiroth, which very generously mask their hurtbox. The blind spot issue extends to his specials too. Though Chronorang is a fantastic projectile, it can of course be used against him as a throwable item. But more than that, with how long the animation is, a fast character can approach from the air and strike him during that time, or if they lack sufficient damage to break through his heavy armor, they can just go for a grab. Same goes for Blunderbuss. The suction only covers directly in front of him. You can attack from above or below. Propeller Pack has impressive verticality and can be hard to two-frame with its big disjoint above him, but it renders him completely exposed horizontally. Not only that, but anyone with a projectile-based attack such as Mega Man's Down Air, Villager's Bowling Ball, or Peach's Turnip can straight up hit him through Propeller every time. Adding insult to injury is that even his counter can very easily miss. Gutcheck only strikes directly in front of him, so if you strike him from above or below, it just misses altogether. On the other hand, Incineroar's Revenge or Joker's Tetrakarn are huge, easily covering most attacks in the game. Suffice to say, none of K-Rool's attacks are completely safe and or spammable. Anything he wants to do, he has to fully commit to it. More pressing is that the bulk of his pressure is virtually negated against a player who's fully aware of his gimmicks and traits. K-Rool thrives on bait and punish, making players believe they can do something when in reality they can't, and destroying them for it. He can take advantage of one's lack of knowledge and confusion by creating situations that can checkmate the opponent if they either don't respect him enough or respect him too much. That's partly why everyone thought he was so broken at the start of Ultimate. He was so different from every other heavyweight that came before him that people had to adjust to all the different tools at his disposal. Once they did, however, it turns out he had to give up a lot to get what he got. You might be thinking this mindset applies to everyone. Knowing how to fight a character is half the battle, which is true, but knowing the weaknesses of a move doesn't always mean you have the physical capability to counter. A perfect example of this is Kazuya's Electric Wind God Fist. You may know how to avoid it, you may even know how to punish it, but even if you do know those things, Kazuya can still spam it because your character might lack the necessary faculty to stop him. No such luck for K-Rool. Every character in the game has an answer to his attacks due to being laggy, having a blind spot, being very specific in range, or all of the above. So compared to most other fighters where knowing the matchup gets you halfway, against K-Rool, knowing the matchup gets you 75% of the way, maybe even more. That's not to say the K-Rool player has no means of playing around it. I speak from experience. We have a K-Rool player in Tri-State who demolishes everyone even in -2 matchups. But the reason you don't see K-Rool up and high in top level is because he's one of the most abusable characters in the game. Every single one of his attacks, every single one of his moves, everything about K-Rool can be heavily exploited in one way or another by everyone in the game. So despite having an attribute that makes his moves unpunishable, he's ironically the most punishable heavyweight in the game besides Ganondorf. Now, do I believe he's bottom tier? Absolutely not. It might just be from all the trauma of fighting my boy Krugbo, but I think K-Rool is criminally slept on. That being said, I understand why he's not as good as the likes of Bowser, Incin, and Kazuya. All the buffs it gave to him over the years only accentuated his strengths, not mitigate his weaknesses. At times he can feel even more threatening than Bowser, at others he can feel more unstable than even Ganondorf. That's the best way I can describe K-Rool. He's unstable. Fall into his traps and gimmicks and he looks like the best character in the game. Figure out his traps and gimmicks and he becomes one of the easiest characters to fight, as that's most of what he has. Anyways, that wraps up this video. I think of all the heavies, K-Rool is my favorite in concept. I like the premise he offers and wish he really was as good as everyone made him out to be in the beginning, but then again, if that were the case, he may become one of the most frustrating characters to fight, so maybe it's for the best that his weaknesses outnumber his strengths. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on K-Rool, if you agree or disagree with my points. But for now, if you enjoyed the video, I encourage you to leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.